Subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on Instagram, and join our Facebook community for epic weekly giveaways. What's up, Airsofters? Quick, off the top of your head, picture an M4 AEG. Now take that picture in your head and make it futuristic. More futuristic. You got it? Well, chances are that what you imagined didn't even come close to how this looks. The Hera Arms CQR AEG by ICS. This is an M4 as imagined by Hera Arms, a German company that specializes in rapid prototyping and bringing new ideas to the tactical shooting market. And now, thanks to ICS, we can experience their take on tactical with this Airsoft version of their CQR, which is hands down one of the most different looking M4 AEGs out there. Initially, most people are either really into how it looks or really turned off because of a preconception about thumbhole stocks. And let me tell you, these are not like thumbhole stocks on, say, an Accuracy International or a Dragunov. These stocks and foregrips are their own animal, so don't discredit it until you've got one in your hands, because it might just surprise you with how comfortable and ergonomic they really are. In this video, I'll tell you everything you need to know before you get one for yourself. And like always, we'll take it to the range and put it through its paces. And I'll give you an honest look at an honestly unique AEG. Up front is the Hera Arms IRS quad rail with full Picatinny rail on top and bottom and half-length pick rail on the sides. Now, some space is reserved for a QD sling mount on either side, and since you rarely side mount accessories this far back on the rail, this lack of space really isn't a huge loss. The upper and lower receiver fit really nicely together and have a very solid lockup. In fact, the whole AEG overall has a very sturdy feel to it. The lower receiver has forged styling with Hera Arms branding on the left, as well as some text on the right that reads the 15th. Now, this is a nod to Hera Arms' reel system by the same name. There is a nice enlarged trigger guard, which I think not only complements the other angles found on the Hera M4, but also gives you more room if you like to run gloves, unless you like getting shot in the fingertips. The controls on the Hera are very standard and non-ambidextrous. The trigger, mag release, and fire selector are all what you'd find on any other M4 out there. That is, until you realize that this select fire switch has a bit of a unique feature. When you go from either of the fire positions into safe, it detensions your spring. And that's a really nice feature that ICS has been doing for quite a while now. That detensioning feature preserves the spring rate of your spring, releasing that spring and preserving your FPS over the long term. On top of that, Hera Arms makes a real 45-90 selector on their real rifles. It's just something that I kind of wish they'd included on this replica. Needless to say, we're stuck with the full 180-degree selector here, which, for what it's worth, is very positive and clicky. Maybe it just needs to be a full throw switch here in order to use that ICS detensioning system. Either way, we'd love to see more Airsoft replicas with that sweet 45-90 selector. Leave a comment if you agree. One other note here, seeing that the rest of the rifle is set up reasonably well for ambidextrous shooting, some ambi controls would have been a really nice added feature. All right, let's talk about the obvious parts, the stock and the foregrip. This furniture really sets the CQR apart from other M4s on the market. They give the rifle an aggressive, futuristic styling that's unique, functional, and honestly, comfortable. The stock is nice and easy to shoulder, has a nice rubberized section on the pistol / motor grip, and comes with a removable aluminum spacer between the rubber stock pad and the stock itself. Side note, the texturing on the grips are a bunch of tiny H shapes for Hera. It's cute. There are a ton of ways to mount a sling on the CQR. QD points, sling loops. It's a little overkill, but it's really nice. You've got options. And here again is one of my gripes with the stock. Now, on a traditional M4, I've got to break my grip a little bit to select from full auto back into either semi or safe. And because of the thumb hole stock on the CQR, I can't break my grip far enough to make that an easy sweep. So I've got to reach extra far or even move my hand completely to the other side of the rifle. And that's where a 45-90 selector or even an ambidextrous selector would have made that process easier. So unless you've got extremely long thumbs and this isn't a problem, you're gonna be finding yourself switching to semi far more often than switching all the way to full auto. Underneath the rubber stock pad and the aluminum spacer is the battery compartment, accessed by removing these two screws. And you might be fooled into thinking that this large blade-shaped stock has a ton of battery storage space. The reality is, however, that the battery compartment is only as big as a normal buffer tube, so you'll want to use a buffer tube-sized battery here. We were able to fit the Matrix 1000 milliamp hour stick battery in here no problem, but it's something to be aware of. Now, the front grip may seem awkward at first glance, but I'm honestly surprised at how comfortable it really is. It fits in the hand nicely, the angle is just right, and the thumb hole style really doesn't get in the way of anything I'd normally do with any other M4. I guess what I'm saying here is that I'm pleasantly surprised with how the Hera handles and feels once you've got it in your grip. You can, of course, remove it if you want, but it really is a very pleasant, streamlined, and functional addition to a really futuristic-looking rifle. If quality externals mean anything for performance, then the Hera Arms CQR is a shining example of that. Shooting at just under 360 FPS with .20 gram BBs, this AEG is rewardingly accurate, easily placing hits on both our 6-inch plates and Evike professional silhouette targets. The rotary hop-up is easy to set and hold its position nicely, and the bucking and nub showed great effectiveness with .25s, with plenty of headroom and adjustment to hop heavier BBs for those windy days out at the field. Of course, make sure your optic is zeroed for the distances you'll be engaging, and you'll get better groups at longer distances. But out of the box, this is one of the more accurate AEGs we've tested. You might have noticed that this features ICS's electric blowback system, which cycles the mock bolt with every shot. As far as EBB systems go, this is actually one of our favorites. But because it's there, it does mean you can't lock back the bolt to make your hop-up adjustments. You'll have to hold the charging hand. The trigger feels really nice. It's snappy and responsive. And because it's an electronic trigger, you don't have any of that slop or take-up that comes with a traditional trigger shoe. Additionally, because of the SSS V2 trigger system, you also get added functionality like active braking and self-diagnostics. On the inside, the Hera CQR features ICS's split gearbox. Having a split gearbox means that you can hinge open the M4 just like the real one, if it wasn't for the Hera front grip. All the same, it makes it really easy to swap the spring. Just by removing the body pins, the upper comes clean off the lower, and the quick change metal spring guide can be removed with a 4mm hex key. The 210mm inner barrel is standard spec, but the hop-up unit is ICS proprietary. There are aftermarket hop-up units available, like the Max MI Pro model hop-up. Removing the CQR stock requires a little bit of elbow grease. There are 2 screws near the motor grip, and then the rear QD point also needs to come off in order to take it apart, which is necessary if you want to swap motors, adjust your motor height, or remove the lower half of the gearbox. The motor being used is the ICS Evo 1 35K long-type ferrite magnet motor. ICS has run the rear wires in a track on the underside of the buffer tube, which is secured by a few screws. This is fantastic protection for your wires, but does add an extra step in disassembly. The lower half of the ICS split gearbox contains the gears and the SSS V2 trigger system, which is proprietary for this gearbox shell. The trigger itself also has a bit of extra material to prevent over travel when engaging the micro switch, so we advise that you stick with the stock trigger for this gearbox. The gears themselves are standard 18:1 ratio and ride on 7mm bushings. Other gear ratios should work since the cutoff sensor is mechanical. The upper half of the gearbox contains the piston, spring, and blowback mechanism. The blowback operates by a special piston interacting with a carrier for the mock bolt. The piston itself is polymer with 8 metal teeth, a ported polymer piston head, and a thrust bearing. The cylinder is ported, and the cylinder head is very stock standard. The tappet plate is also standard spec, but the nozzle is proprietary, fitting inside the ICS spec hop-up unit. Compression out of the box is decent, but could certainly benefit from a compression kit. Just make sure to get ICS compatible parts. So, with just enough uniqueness inside and out, the Hera Arms CQR is more than just a looker. It's honestly one of the better performing AEGs we've had the pleasure of testing. It's accurate, responsive, handles well, has built-in programmability and circuit protection, and has a sturdy construction and ergos that really give you confidence when you shoulder it. Bottom line, get it for the looks, and you'll be rewarded with a top-performing AEG that will set you apart from the rest in more ways than one. Get your very own ICS Hera Arms CQR AEG right here at Evike.com. Thanks for watching. This is an M4 AEG as imagined by Hera Arms, a German company that specializes in rapid prototyping and beeping from delivery trucks. Well, that's what we were able to get. And maybe it needs to be a full throw switch in order to use that ICS detensioning system. And the crowd went wild.